Okay. All right, good. Yeah, so let me give you the breakdown for this one. So let me get the pencil toolbar up. All right, guys, this set of questions is going to be review for your midterm replacement. And so this first question is going to help you replace test 1. And so if you notice, I've got -4 minus 5i minus -4 plus 2i. So I see that subtraction, so we're going to change our signs. So I'm going to have -4 minus 5i plus 4 minus 2i. And so I change my signs. The reason why that's important, guys, because if you notice, I have a -4 plus 4, and that actually gives me 0. So that goes away. -4 plus 4 gives me 0. And then -5i minus 2i would give me -7i. And then that would be my answer for this one. So -7i would be the answer for that one. So just remember, when you have subtraction, make sure that you change your signs, okay? So that's the first one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the second one. If you've got that pulled up, you can go ahead and start writing the next question. So here's the second one. Let me go to the next slide. All right, so another complex number question. So again, this replaces test 1. This is question number 2. This, if you want to write down a note, this is FOIL. You want to multiply these two together. So if you multiply these, you would get -18 and then plus 48i and then plus 3i. Just watch your signs tomorrow. And then -8i squared. I don't think anybody will have any problems with that, but the main thing I need you to remember is the fact that, let me change colors, what is I squared always equal to? -1. That's right. So please don't forget that tomorrow. So here's what you're going to have, -18 plus 48i plus 3i, and then this is going to change into a +8. And then you can combine your like terms, so -18 plus 8 is a -10, and then a 48 plus 3i is 51i. And so this will be my answer for -10 plus 51i. So just remember, for your notes for this one, just remember to FOIL and watch your signs. And also just remember I squared is equal to -1 if you've forgotten. That's great, great review. All right, so let me change colors back to black. All right, so the third question, again, this is test 1. So the third question is almost identical, but here's where I'm trying to trick you up. It says 6 plus 6i squared. Remember, guys, this squared literally means 6 plus 6i times 6 plus 6i. So it would help you guys to write that out. So write that out, and then we're still just going to FOIL this out. So 6 times 6, that'll give me 36. 6 times 6i will give me 36i. 6i times 6 will give me 36i. And then 6i times 6i would give me 36, but it would be I squared. And so that's great. Just FOIL. Two things. Remember, I squared. That's right. I squared, change that to a -1. And so here's what you'd have. 36 plus 36i plus 36i minus 36. And then combine your like terms. Well, you notice 36 minus 36, though, that cancels out. That's right. And then 36 plus 36i, that'll be 72i. So that's good. Good review. Good review. So far, 3 questions. We're halfway through with test 1, but that's test 1. All right. For question 4, it gives me this, and you had one of these on your test yesterday, but it gives me -3 minus 6i over -7 minus 3i. I was actually surprised because a lot of people forgot the main thing for a division of complex numbers is the word conjugate. The conjugate of -7 minus 3i is -7 plus 3i. So make sure you do the conjugate. Just change the sign of the imaginary part. And what's going to happen is we're going to multiply top and bottom. So this turns into a very lengthy FOIL problem. So you got to FOIL the numerator and you got to FOIL the denominator. So that's what we're going to do. Let's tackle this. Well, I'm going to start with the numerator. So -7 times a -3 is a +21. -3 times a +3i is a -9i. A -6i times a -7 is a +42i. And a -6 times a +3 is a -18i squared. Now, I agree that I squared is -1, but instead of working on that just yet, I'm going to go ahead and FOIL the bottom also and just take care of everything at one time. So if I FOIL the denominator, -7 times -7 is a +49. Negative 7 times a positive 3i is a negative 21i. A negative 3i times a negative 7 is a positive 21i. And a negative 3 times a positive 3 is a negative 9i squared. Now, there's two things I want you to notice. First of all, obviously, that I squared for both of these is negative 1. So I'm going to replace those in a second. The second thing I want you to notice is if you look at the bottom, what happens with a negative 21 and a positive 21? Cancel out, right? So here's what we're going to have. You're going to have 21 minus 9i plus 42i plus 18 over 49 plus 9. If you're probably wondering, remember I had to change my signs. Negative 9 times negative 1 is positive 9. All right, my final answer, combined like terms, 21 plus 18 is going to give me a 39. A negative 9 plus 42 is going to give me a negative 33. Yeah, positive 33. And then in the denominator, 49 plus 9 will give me 58. And so I should end up with 39 plus 33 over 58. What you got, Tim? Positive 33i? Right there, is it? Right there? Right here? Right there, that's conjugate. Yeah. Conjugate, that means you change the sign on the imaginary. Yeah. So change the sign on the imaginary. That was a good question. All right, so that will be my final answer for that. Don't worry about having to simplify anything. Remember, the test tomorrow is multiple choice. You'll be able to find the answer really quickly. There's only 4 choices anyway. All right, so that's question number 4. All right, moving on to question number 5. For question number 5, it's been a while since we did this. Question number 5, this is still test 1, but this is I to the 67. That's right. So I'm going to remember, guys, here's the pattern. Remember, I1, and the two negatives go in the middle. This is remainder 1, remainder 2, remainder 3, and remainder 0. As Nyla just said, what we're going to do is we're going to take that 4, we're going to divide it by 4. That's right. So 67 divided by 4. So 4 goes into 6 one time, and then that's 2. Bring down the 7. 4 goes into 27. That's going to be 6. So that'll be 24. And subtract that. That gives you a remainder of 3. So now I can look over here. Remainder of 3. That means that my answer is going to be negative I. So this is equal to simplified negative I. So just remember, divide by 4 and then do I1, and you're good to go for number 5. That will be fine. All right, for number 6, for the last one on test 1, so this is the last one on test 1, is a square root problem, and it's basically asking you to simplify. So I could give you any number I want to, but the first thing I want you to notice is what has to come out because of that negative. So guys, tomorrow on the test, if you see an answer choice that does not have an I there, I would just go ahead and eliminate that because it's not worth it. However, the 24, I can break this down into 6 times 4. Now you're probably thinking, well, why'd you use 6 times 4? Why not 2 times 12 or 8 times 3? Yeah, there's a square root of 4, and so the square root of 4 is 2, and so I have a 2i on the outside, and I have a 6 on the inside. So I'd have 2i radical 6, and that would be my answer for number 6. But you could do any type of problem like that. Just remember, try to break it down using numbers that have a square root. All right, in the grand scheme of things, guys, that takes care of test 1. Those 6 questions take care of test 1. So let's move on to test 2. Test 2 was all about quadratics. Now, you don't have to remember the formulas for test 2. The formulas are going to be on the cover page when I give that to you tomorrow. But here's the first one. So we're going to start off with test 2. And this is question number 7. All right. Now, I would probably not write down this whole problem since you can go back and watch the video. What I would write down, guys, is this right there. Write down h of t equals negative 4t squared plus 64t plus 24. Now, while you're writing that down, just a quick review. I know that this is a quadratic because of the degree of 2. Remember, anytime you have a power, an exponent of 2, that's my hint that it's a quadratic. And so this is a quadratic, so I know I'm going to have to work with this quadratic. It says an arrow is shot upward. So if you can imagine it's being shot upward, well then gravity obviously is going to cause it to fall back down, hit the ground. Well, it says the height of the arrow can be modeled by this equation. It says how long, that's the key word. Put that word with it too, how long, because that's time, How long after the arrow is released does it reach its maximum height? So I want to know how long it will be until it hits that point right there. You don't have to memorize the formula, guys. On the formula page I give you, you will see this formula. It's h is equal to negative b over 2a. That is what you need to know to use. You don't need to know the formula. I'm going to give you the formula. But this is the formula we're going to use, negative b over 2a, and it will be on your formula sheet. So if you go back, all right, so here's how we're going to use it. If you remember, this is in standard form, so a is negative 4, b is 64, and c is 24. In that formula, we don't even need c, so if you just want to cross that out, you're fine. But a is negative 4, b is 64. So if I plug it into my formula, I'd have negative, and b is 64, over 2 times a is negative 4. So I'd have negative 64 divided by 2 times negative 4. You can use your calculator. I'm going to end up getting a positive 8, so that means the answer to that would be 8 seconds. And then that's it. That's as far as you got it. The main thing you got to know is which formula to use, right? Because that's the only part I'm not going to tell you. So do not, here's where you're going to mess up. Don't mess up on this. Do not use the quadratic formula because it's not asking you to solve it. So when you see a problem like this, just do negative b over 2a. Just remember that and you'll be good to go. Right here, how long? If you remember that how long tomorrow, you'll be good to go. Just remember negative b over 2a. All right, now I know that was a little bit a stretch for the first one, but let's try some more quadratics. So that's test 2. All right, so another question for quadratics is this one right here. And notice, and then I'm glad you brought that up. So notice with this one, it's going to clearly say when to use the quadratic formula. So it says to use the quadratic formula, so that's what we're going to use. Again, you don't have to memorize the formula, so I'm just going to take a second and write it down for you. It's negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you the most common mistake when y'all took the actual test before was you forgot to move everything over and equal it to 0. So be careful. Don't say a, b, c and just go with it. The first thing I've got to do is I got to say, hey, wait, this is negative 7. So I need to move that over to the other side. So what's it going to become? Positive. That's right. So 11a squared minus 7a plus 7 is equal to 0. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to label now A, B, and C. So I got my A, my B, and my C. And so now we can plug that into my quadratic formula. So be careful. B is negative 7. This is already a negative B. So I'm going to have 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times 11 times 7 all over 2 times 11. Now, if you remember when I taught this, can you type that whole thing into your calculator? No, unfortunately not. The only thing you can type in is the discriminant, and don't put no square root up in there. So just type in negative 7 squared minus 4 times 11 times 7. If you got negative 259, you're good to go. All right, so here's what we're going to have. 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 259 over 22. And I'm going to pause for 1 second, because remember, guys, if this were your regular old test, if you left it like that, I would take off 1 point. Why? Because the I. Now, here's the great thing, guys. The test tomorrow is multiple choice. So if you can go ahead and just pick out the answer, you're good to go. So here's my final answer. 7 plus or minus I radical 259 over 22. And that would be my answer for number 8. So again, that's good. That's good. Perfect. All right. Now, for number 9, number 8, that was still quadratic, so that's still test 2. For number 9, let's see what I've got for number 9. All right, for number 9, number 9 is the same setup. It says solve it with the quadratic formula. Again, the biggest problem, though, is you see it's 11n squared plus n plus 20 equals 11. Whenever you solve with the quadratic formula, you can't let it equal to a number. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 11 from both sides. So that gives me 11n squared plus n plus 9 is equal to 0. Once you've done that, then you can do the quadratic formula. So we're going to do A, B, and C. Notice that the understood value for B is a positive 1, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 11 times 9 all over 2 times 11. Now, again, you can't type all that into the calculator. All you can type in is the discriminant. And so you should get negative 1 plus or minus radical negative 395 over 22. And then the only thing that I have to worry about trying to take out is that I. So I'd have negative 1 plus or minus I radical 395 over 22. Can't simplify that anymore. You're good to go. So remember, of the 6 questions on test 2 tomorrow, 2 of those are quadratic formulas, okay? So just remember that, keep that in the back of your mind. 2 of them so far. We did number 8, number 9. They were both quadratic formulas. The first one we didn't use quadratic formula. We used that negative b over 2a. All right, for number 10, your problem looks like this. Now, it's been a while, but you did have practice with this on test 2. It says write the quadratic function that has the following root. So in other words, I'm telling you that these are my 2 answers, positive 3/4 and negative 2/5. If you remember, the way I taught you how to do this is take each one of these and just simply set them equal to x. So say x is equal to 3 over 4. Let me undo that. X is equal to 3 over 4, and then put x is equal to negative 2 over 5, because I'm saying that those are my 2 answers. Now you're probably thinking, why did I do that? It's because what we're going to do is we're going to put each one of these x's over 1, and we're going to cross multiply. So I'm going to get 4x is equal to 3, and then over here I'm going to get 5x is equal to negative 2. The biggest thing I'm worried about for you guys is watching your signs. Make sure that over here this was a negative 2. On the left side, make sure that's positive 3. Once you've done that, it's all about setting it equal to 0. So on this one, I'm going to have 4x minus 3, because I'm going to bring this over to the other side, set that equal to 0. For this one on the right, I'm going to have 5x plus 2 equals 0, because I'm going to move this over to the other side also. So I've got 4x minus 3, and I've got 5x plus 2. What you do now is, to get the original one, is you're going to multiply, and we're going to get our answer. So we're just going to put these 2 together, and we're going to FOIL them. So 4x times 5x, 20x squared. 4x times 2, 8x. Negative 3 times 5, negative 15x. And negative 3 times 2, negative 6. The only thing that's additional is make sure you combine your like terms. So you get 20x squared minus 7x minus 6. And that would be your answer for that one. So anytime you see a problem like this, simply set them equal to x, but do the butterfly method, cross multiply, set them equal to 0, and then just FOIL. And that's it. And so this would be my answer for number 10. So you've got one where you have to write the equation given the 2 roots. But just remember, just set them equal to x. And watch your signs. That's the key thing also. All right, for number 11, what we have is another quadratic, so this is still test 2. It wants you to graph this. Now, I don't have enough room, I don't think, on here, but if you would, just go ahead and write down this equation, and then, guys, I'm not going to be able to use this because my toolbar, well, I might be able to error down, but I'm going to take that chance. I'm just going to leave it like this, and I'm going to graph it. So I've got f of x equal to 2, x plus 4 squared plus 4. There's 2 things I need you to get down for this problem to do it. The first one is write down the word vertex. That's the first thing. And the second thing, write down opens and then put up/down. Okay, if we can answer these 2 things, you're good to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the vertex. Remember, the vertex is a point. It's technically HK. That's right. Now, remember, H is inside the parentheses, but remember, you have to take the opposite. So this is going to be negative 4. You do not take the opposite of the number on the outside, so it's going to be negative 4, positive 4. So that's my vertex. And then for opens up and down, what you do is you look at A, the first number. If A is positive, it opens down. If A is negative, if A is positive, it opens up. If A is negative, it opens down. Well, look at A. A is a positive 2, which means it's going to open up. So here's what you would do, guys. It's multiple choice. What I would do is I would look at all 4 answer choices, and I would find the answer choice that has a point at negative 4, positive 4, so right there, and that it opens up. So you would look for, of the 4 choices, there's only going to be one of them that would look like that. Some of them might open down, to cross those out for this one. But just look for those 2 things, and you'll be good to go. All right, the last quadratic, so number 12, and this is a round out test 2. The last quadratic looks like this, and it is asking you to convert. That's the key word right there. Convert it into vertex form. If you remember, and this is not necessary, but if you remember when we first started quadratics, I told you for quadratics there are 2 forms. It can either be in standard form or it could be in vertex form, but they mean the same thing. This right here, guys, is in standard form. What we want is we want it in vertex form. So what we do is, the first thing is I want to identify what A, B, and C are. So notice that A is -1, B is +2, let me change that, B is +2, and then C is -3. Now, please don't get confused. Does it say anything about using the quadratic formula? No, so don't use that quadratic formula. Go back, and on the answer on the formula page, you'll see this formula, h equals -b/2a. That's what we're going to use, because remember, in order to do vertex form, you've got to have it y is equal to a x minus h squared plus k. That's vertex form right here, what we're going to get at. So we've got to figure out what h is. So let's plug in a, b, and that we don't need c. So negative b, so 2 is b, so it's going to be -2 over 2 times a -1, so that'll give me -2 over -2, which means h is a +1. Okay, and I'm going to circle that. So h is a +1. We already know what a is. A is -1. The only thing that's remaining is I need to know what k is. If you've forgotten, the way that you find k, that's it, is you plug h into your function, So what I'm going to have is negative, and then put 1 squared. Make sure you see that negatives on the outside of my parentheses, so negative, parentheses, 1 squared, plus 2 times 1 minus 3. And literally just type that into your calculator, and hopefully you should end up getting, you can double check me, you should end up getting a -2. And so that would be the value for k. And so literally you just, to find k, you plug h back into the function, and that's how you get k. So that means your answer would be this. Y equals a, we said a was -1, x minus h, we said h was +1, squared, plus k, and we said k was -2. So you could really write it like this, -1, x minus 1 squared minus 2. And that would be the answer that you're looking for. The only thing I'm concerned about is watching your signs, right, and plugging it into your calculator, but other than that, you're good to go. You remembered how to do that. Now, test 2, again, featured quadratics. Those are your 6 questions for quadratics, and that will take care of test 2. Test 3 moved on into what we call polynomials. So we had like polynomials and solving polynomials and stuff like that. And so test 3 is going to feature the next 6 problems. So we're going to start off with number 13 for test 3. All right, so for test 3, here's your first one. It's number 13. It says, approximate the real zeros of each function to the nearest 10th. And so this is the function that I have. Now I know that you have it on your computer screen. So here's what I'm going to try to do, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. I'm going to see if I can. I don't know if I can. I'm going to see if I can minimize. I don't know if I can minimize that. Let me close this, and then I'm going to minimize this, and then I'm going to open up my computer, not my computer, but my calculator. It's going to take it just a brief moment to load. Let's see if I can go back to that original file. There, okay, wait, there it is. There it is. So I can go back and look at it when I need to. All right, and so I don't want to look at the video. I don't know why that video is up there. But let me go ahead and get my graphing page. So hopefully, let me hit close. All right, so there's it. All right, now I'm going to go back to this. Let me go back. So I'm going to have negative x cubed plus 3x squared. So let me write that. So guess what you got? So negative x cubed, and I'm going to put plus 3x squared, and then let me go back to it right quick, minus 3, and then, yeah, minus 3. And so if you type that into your calculator, here's the graph that you would get. And so let me go back to the problem. It says to approximate the real zeros. So if I look at this graph, I notice that this graph, how many times does it cross the x-axis? 1, 2, 3. So those are my answers. So here's how you find them. Hit Menu, Trace, Graph Trace. And you see my little bullseye comes up. So I'm just going to go to the left. And you see it says 0. Here's one of my answers right here, negative 0.879. That's one of my answers, negative 0.879. If I go the other direction, you'll notice that my calculator will say 0 again right there, and that's another one of my answers, 1.35. So I'm going to say negative 0.9 and 1.4. So let me go back to it. So negative 0.9 and 1.4. And then if I go to the other one right here, it says 2.53. So let me go back to it. Let me minimize this first. So go back to it. So that's 2.5. And so that will be my answer for number 13. So when it says approximate the real zeros, just plug it into your graphing calculator, do menu trace, graph trace, and then get your answers. Now this graph crossed it 3 times. Yours might cross it 4, but whatever it is, that's how many answers you should have. All right, let me go back now. I've got to pull up the, I don't know why that came up. I'm going to pull up the algebra thing. Let me go to view, presentation mode, and then, yeah, let's go up to number 14 now. All right, good. Number 14. All right, so for number 14, it is a long division problem. I wouldn't write this down because the way we're going to write it down is like this. You're going to have 3p minus 8 divided into negative 18p cubed plus 33p squared plus 46p minus 12. And so here's how we approach this. Remember, what do you multiply 3p by to get a negative 18? That's key. Negative 6, right? Watch that sign. So that'll be negative 6p squared. And so negative 6 times 3 would give me negative 18p cubed. And then don't forget, negative 6 times negative 8, that'll give me a positive 48p squared. Now, here's the thing. If you make a mistake, this is probably what's going to happen. I'm going to change color so you can see it better. You need to remember to change your signs. That first term should cross out, and it does. And then 33 minus 48, that should give me a negative 15p squared. And then I'm just going to bring down everything else so I can look at it. So repeat the process again now. So yes, 3p times a negative 15, that's going to be a negative 5p. Yep, that's a minus 12. All right, thank you. All right, and so then that's going to give me a negative 15p squared and then a positive 40p. And then again, I'm going to change color so you can see it. I'm going to change my signs, and this will always cross out if you do it right. So if it doesn't cross out, that means you didn't change your signs. And then 46 minus 40 will give me a 6p minus 12. And then 3p times 2, so I'm looking at a 2. So 3p times 2 would give me 6p, and then negative 8 times a positive 2 would give me a negative 16. And just don't forget, change your signs one more time. So negative, positive. I ran out of room, guys, but negative 12 plus 16 leaves me a remainder of 4. And so that will be my answer for that long division. What's probably going to help you again is the fact that it's going to be multiple choice. So if you don't get one of the multiple choice answers, then you probably messed up on the sign. So just go back and try it one more time, and you probably can catch your mistake. All right, so 13 and 14 were both polynomials. So 15, we're still on test 3. So 15, here's what it looks like for 15. For 15, we're going to change it up this time. Now we're going to try dividing it by synthetic division. Now, in reality, guys, you could do long division on this, but remember, synthetic division was just so much quicker, and it only works when you have this type of setup. So here's how synthetic division works. Put a box and draw a line. Now, where people messed up on this before was you always forgot this part. Always put the opposite in the box. So you see that's a positive 1, so I'm going to put a negative 1 inside of the box. And so now put your, oh, I got to be careful. I was about to make this mistake. Are these numbers? That's right. They're not in order. So if you notice, the highest power is a 4. So that's understood 1. So I'm going to put a 1 right there. The next one is a 9. The next one is a 16. The next one is a 15. And the last one is that 12. Okay? So that was very key. So even I could have easily made a mistake right there by not looking at it. So that's in order. Now, what you do for synthetic division is always, always, always bring down the first number. So bring down that 1 and now multiply. So 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. 9 minus 1 is 8. 8 times a negative 1 is a negative 8. 16 minus 8 is 8. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. 15 minus 8 is 7. 7 times a negative 1 is negative 7. And 12 minus 7 is 5. Here's my suggestion to you guys. Again, since this test is multiple choice, what I would do is I would immediately look at all 4 answer choices, and the one that has a remainder of 5 has to be my answer. But just for the record, your answer is always 1 degree less. So you see how I started off with a degree 4? My answer is going to be 1x to the third plus 8x squared plus 8x plus 7 with a remainder of 5. But again, if you could pick out the answer right off the bat with just your remainder of 5, I wouldn't waste any more time. I'd just go with that and call it a day. Now, we're about to end up on the last question. No, not. We're on number 16. So we still got to go to 18. Sorry. So 16, we're still going to be on test 3. So let's see what what number 16 has to offer for us also. All right, for question number 16, it says find all zeros. So that, and this is what got some of y'all yesterday. Find all zeros means I want you to solve it. Now, what I mean by that is look at this polynomial. Here's my polynomial, 2x cubed minus 2x squared minus 43x plus. This power of 3 lets me know how many answers am I going to have? 3. So I know that I'm going to have 3 answers. What I'm telling you here, though, guys, is that one of my answers is 5, right? So the question is, how do I get my other 2? Well, if I know one of my answers is 5, let's do synthetic division. So put a 5 in the box, draw your line, and so put down, and thankfully, guys, these are in order. So I'm going to have 2, and then negative 2, then negative 43, and positive 15. And let's do synthetic division on this. So this would be 2, 5 times 2 is 10, negative 2 plus 10 is 8, 8 times 5 is 40, negative 43 and 40 is negative 3, negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. It should not surprise you that my remainder is 0, because if I tell you that 5 is one of my answers, well, dang it, 0 should be my remainder. Now the question that remains is, well, how do I get my other 2 answers? If you remember, that's it. This is quadratic. And that's why we had to learn about the quadratic formula on test 2 before we learned how to do this. So I'm going to just write it out for you. I'm going to have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3 all over 2 times 2. And just like before, I can't type that whole thing into the calculator, but what I can do is type in the discriminant, and here's what I would have. Negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 88 over 4. Now, that is a great answer, and if you would have wrote this on your test 3 when you took it in class, I would have counted off a point because you can simplify it. Because you could simplify 88. Now, here's the thing, the difference is, if you notice, if you work this out, this would not be an answer choice, because on the test, since it's multiple choice, it would want you to simplify this 88. So here's how we're going to break it down. 88 is 4 times 22. Well, you're probably thinking, well, why'd you use the number 4? Because the square root of 4 is 2. So here's what I'm going to have. I'm going to have negative 8 plus or minus 2, because you said the square root of 4 is 2, 2 radical 22 in the inside over 4. And there's one final thing. You might be able to pick out the answer from your 4 choices, but in reality this wouldn't be one either, because what's the last thing I can divide all 3 of these numbers by? I can divide everything by 2. I can't touch what's inside that radical. That's what's inside the radical gets left alone. But here's my final answer. I'd have negative 4 plus 1 root 22 over 2, and I'd have negative 4 minus 1 root 22 over 2. And you're thinking, well, where'd you get that from? Right here. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, plus or minus. 2 divided by 2 is 1, radical 22, over 4 divided by 2 is 2. And all I did was just split them up so you could see them individually. But those would be my 3 answers. And in reality, guys, this is how the answer choice would look, all 3 of them split up. Now, if you can pick out the answer from right here, that's fine. That's good and dandy. I don't care. But this is how it's going to look like on the test written out right here. So notice that find all zeros, that means to solve it. And I gave you one of the zeros on that one. All right, number 17. For number 17, this is still test 3. We're about to be winding down with test 3, though. So for test 3, number 17, here's what it says. It says to find all zeros. Now, guys, here's what's great about this test tomorrow. It is multiple choice. So I know that one of my answers, I don't preach that enough, I know that one of my answers has to be one of these choices. So you remember how we did the P's and the Q's and you had to come out with that long list of numbers to test? Well, here's the thing, guys. If you notice, I've got 5, 3, and negative 7. One of those numbers has to work. So why waste my time with the P's and the Q's? Let's just go ahead and test them. So the question is, though, how are you going to test it? Synthetic division. So let's pick one. Well, if you know which number shows up twice, why don't we test that one out? So let's test out the 5, see if that works. So here's what I'm going to have. 1, 1, negative 23, negative 35. And so here's what I'm going to do. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Negative 23 plus 37. 7 times 5 is 35. Remainder is 0. We are good to go. So I know that my answer is not C, and I know that my answer is not B. How much time? That saves you a lot. Now the question remains, though, is of the two, which one's my answer? Just remember what you just did a second ago. Quadratic formula. So we're going to have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared. So I'm going to do 6 squared, so 6 squared minus 4AC, so 1 times 7, all over 2 times 1. Now, again, you've heard me say this again and again. You can't type the whole thing in, only the discriminant. So if I type that in, I'd have like 36 minus 28. I should get a positive 8. Now, here's what I'm going to pause for, because this is what I was talking about a second ago. If you notice, for this problem, what I have here, you can't, you might be able to pick out the answer right off the bat, because if you notice, which one would it probably look like, A or D? Let's see if we can simplify it. Let's break down the 8. How would I break down 8? I'd use 4 and 2, and the square root of 4 is 2. So this would be negative 6 plus or minus 2, square root of 2 over 2. That might be able to give you enough to pick out your answer. It has to be A, because there's no radical 3 inside of that radical. But I'm going to finish it off for you. I can divide everything by 2, and here's what I would have. I'd have negative 3 plus or minus 1 radical 2 over 1, and sure enough, that's what I have here. Negative 3 plus 1 radical 2, negative 3 minus 1 radical 2. So it had to be answer choice A. So again, use those multiple choice answers to help you pick out your right answer and to help narrow down the search. But that's number 17, so that's good. All right, the last one for test 3. So this is going to round us off. For the last one for test 3, what you have here is state the possible rational zeros. And I want you to understand, guys, this does not mean solve. Nowhere in that problem does it say solve. This right here is asking me to find my P's and my Q's. This is what this problem is doing. So you're not solving. So remember, P is always the last number. Q is always the first number. So my P is going to be 1. My Q is going to be 3. Factors of 1, thankfully, are just 1. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And so now just divvy it up. 1 over 1 is 1. 1 over 3 is 1/3. But always remember, you got to put plus or minus with it. And that's it. So this problem, it didn't want you to solve it. It just wanted you to see if you remembered your P's and Q's, so your rational root theorem. And that's going to take care of test 3, guys. So that's going to take care of test 3. So test 2 is all about polynomials. The final test, the one that you just took, was over functions. So test 4. These are the last 6 questions. So for test 4, what it starts off with is, let's see here. It starts off with, let me put this back into the thing. For test 4, what it has here is, spacebar. Yep. All right. Here's test 4, the first question. It says, approximate the relative minimum and maximum of each function to the nearest tenth. All right, so here's what we do. We're going to use our graphing calculator. So x cubed minus 2x squared minus 2x. So I'm going to type that in the calculator. So I'm just going to hit tab, and then I'm going to clear this out. All right, so x cubed, and let me find it. So x cubed minus 2x squared minus 2. So let me type that in. Minus 2x squared minus 2. And so here's what the function would look like, just like that. And you can visually see, hey, there's a max right there. There's a min right there. So the way that we're going to find that is go to Menu, Trace, Graph Trace. And you see my little cursor comes up. So that says 0. I don't want that. Trace it down. You see where it says minimum. That would be one of my answers right there. A negative, I'm sorry, not a negative, but a 1.33, negative 3.19. So that would be my minimum. And then my maximum is right there. It says 0, negative 2. And that's all you've got to do for number 19 is just state what the minimum and the maximum are. And they are both right there. So that's good to go. All right, so that was number 19. All right, for number 20, it says find the inverse, and you had a problem like this yesterday. All right, so remember, when you're finding the inverse, first thing is scratch that out and put a y there, and then we're going to put equals the cube root of x plus 3 minus 1. And so then I'm just going to put that right there. Now remember, to find the inverse, what you do is you make sure that you switch the x and the y. So what I would do is I would just switch the x and the y. So I'm going to get x is equal to the cube root of y plus 3. So y plus 3. My pen died, so I'm having to use the mouse for this. Y plus 3 minus 1. So we switch the x and the y, and now you're going to solve for, I know that looks like an x, but guys, that's my y. I'm going to solve for y, so I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and so then this is what I'm going to have. I'm going to have x plus 1 equals the cube root of y plus 3. So the cube root of y plus 3. And so then to get rid of the cube root, you're going to cube both sides. So I'm going to cube both sides. And so that gives me x plus 1 cubed. And on the right-hand side, the cube root and the cube cross out. And then finally, guys, to solve this for y, you're just going to subtract 3. And to save me some space, I'm going to color this, change color. So here's my answer. I'd have x plus 1 cubed, sorry guys, x plus 1 cubed minus 3, and that would be my inverse for that problem. Sorry about the writing, but the pen died. I'm having to let it charge back up. All right, so that's number 20. So that's number 20. All right, we've got 4 more problems to clear out test 4. So that was 20. So 21. For 21, here's what the problem looks like. It said perform the indicated operation. Here's where some people messed up yesterday, is that, guys, that says f of x times g of x. It does not say fog. So when you see this problem, guys, that has a little multiplication symbol right there, you're literally going to just FOIL these together. So you're going to get 2x minus 4, and then you're going to multiply that by x cubed plus 5x. And guys, to save time, because I'm having to use this pen, the mouse is really bad. If FOIL this out, you should get 2x cubed. FOIL that out, that's a 2. And then FOIL this out, you'll get 10x squared. And then keep on FOILing it, you'll get 2x to the 4th. Yeah, 2x to the 4th. All right, and then that'll be 10x squared. And then that'll be minus 4x cubed to the 3rd. That's right. And then that'll be minus 20x. My goodness. And you don't have to worry about putting it in order, but there it is. I'm going to say it one more time so you can audio hear it. 2x to the 4th plus 10x squared minus 4x cubed minus 20x. And that will be the answer for 21, as rough as that looks. All right, 22. For 22, here's your problem for this. Notice the difference. This is a function composition problem. So you will plug G into H. And what I mean by that is you're going to take this G that I just circled and you're going to plug it into H. You're going to plug it into there. So here's what you'd have. You'd have 4a minus 5, and it's to the 2nd power, so squared, plus 1. Remember, you've got to FOIL this first, and so I don't have to write it out. I'm just going to go ahead and FOIL it out for you. If you FOIL this out, guys, you should get 16a squared, and then minus 40, I'm going to put it minus 40a, and you can double check me later, but it's minus 40a plus 25. So I went ahead and FOILed that out for you. I didn't show it to you, but I didn't have room. I mean, didn't have space. So that's going to be then plus 1. So if you FOIL this out right here, double check me, you will get that right there, I promise. Now just combine your like terms, so you end up getting 16a squared minus 40A, and then that's going to be plus 26, and that would be your answer for number 22. So that's great for 22. All right, so that's your fog and golf question on that test. All right, 23. For 23, what I have is which of the following functions is odd? And if you notice, I've got 4 answer choices. So it says symmetrical about the origin. Remember, let me recap that with you. Remember, it's even if you get exactly the same. It's odd if you get exactly the opposite. It's neither if you get neither one. Now, what do you mean by if you get exactly the same? You plug in negative x. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that A is an even function, so that one's not it. D is an even function. Well, no, D is a neither function. D doesn't even have anything. And then B is also another neither. The only one that's odd is C, and I'll prove it to you. If you plug in negative x to the third power, and then you have negative 3 times a negative x, when you have negative x to the third power, that's going to give me a negative x cubed. And negative 3 times a negative x is a positive 3x. If you notice, they're exactly the opposite of each other. And so that means that C has to be the odd one. If it asked for even, then they would have been exactly the same. But this one was asking for odd, so that's why it was C for number 23. All right, for the last one, and this will clear it all off. For 24, it says which of the following functions represents a cubic function, and you ain't got to worry about that now because look, all of them have a power of 3, so we got that taken care of. That has been reflected. Guys, remember, if it's reflected, that means it's got to have a negative in front, right? So I can go ahead and scratch out C. So it's either A, B, or D. It says it's been reflected, it's been shifted 3 units left and 2 units up. 2 units up means plus 2 at the outside. Well, I can go ahead and cross out that one, and I can cross out that one, so what does it leave behind? A, that one. And notice, remember, 3 units to the left, always do the opposite, so left is negative, so opposite of that would be plus 3, so that's why that's a plus 3 right there. Now, that's all 24 questions. I promise you, if you study all 24 of these, you're going to do well on the midterm replacement. Good luck, guys, and that is it. If y'all want to say anything on the video before I post it? Goodbye. Goodbye. All right. Bye.